March the 22nd, 2026, 11:37 p.m. A CRJ-900 regional jet is on final approach to runway 4 at LaGuardia Airport. Air Canada Express Flight 8646 is cleared to land. Everything appears routine. At the same moment, a Port Authority fire truck is moving across or entering that same runway environment. It is also cleared. 1 controller, 2 clearances, 1 runway, 2 vehicles. Both pilots are killed. Dozens of passengers are injured. The NTSB launches its investigation within hours. Within days, investigators begin focusing on details that could reshape how this entire story is understood. Not just what happened in those final seconds, but the system behind it. Because this is not just the story of a collision. This is the story of how multiple layers of a system can align at the worst possible moment. To understand what happened on runway 4, you need to understand how an air traffic control tower actually works. Most people picture one person in a glass booth talking to pilots. Calm voice, simple instructions, one stream of communication. The reality is more complex and far more fragile than it appears from the outside. A properly staffed control tower separates responsibilities into distinct roles. The local controller manages aircraft in the air, including approaches, landings, and takeoffs. Every aircraft on an active runway or in the immediate airspace is their responsibility, and every second matters. The ground controller manages everything on the surface, including taxiing aircraft, service vehicles, and emergency trucks. Any vehicle crossing an active runway goes through them. Every movement has to be coordinated, sequenced, and timed correctly. 2 people, 2 radio frequencies, 2 completely separate cognitive loads. That separation exists for a reason. The moment a single controller is managing both frequencies simultaneously, they are tracking aircraft descending at high speed, while also tracking ground vehicles moving in multiple directions across intersecting runways. It is not a difficult job made slightly harder. It is 2 fundamentally different jobs performed at the same time on one headset with no separation between them. The margin for error is not reduced. It is compressed. In recent years, investigators and aviation safety analyses have repeatedly pointed to workload and role complexity as contributing factors in runway incidents and near misses. Not always the primary cause, but consistently part of the chain. Situations where responsibilities overlap, where attention is divided, where timing becomes critical and small delays can cascade into larger problems. Those lessons exist for a reason. They are written into procedures, training, and system design. What investigators are now examining is whether something similar may have occurred at LaGuardia. In the early stages of the investigation, reporting indicated that there were 2 controllers present in the tower cab that night. But that detail alone does not resolve anything. The key question is not how many people were there, it is how responsibilities were assigned in real time. Who was handling local control? Who was handling ground control? And were those roles clearly separated, or did they overlap in those critical seconds? Right now, that remains under investigation. Audio analysis has led some controllers familiar with the system to believe that responsibilities may have overlapped, but that interpretation is based on early information. The exact configuration, who was managing which function, at what moment, is still being reconstructed. There is another layer to this, LaGuardia's own operating procedures. According to reporting, the airport had guidance on when certain roles should not be combined. Specifically, that position consolidation should not occur before midnight or within a defined window after a shift begins. That guidance exists to manage workload and reduce risk during higher activity periods. The crash happened just before that threshold, which raises a question, not a conclusion, a question. Were those procedures followed? Were they interpreted differently under operational conditions? Did staffing levels influence how roles were assigned that night? Those are now central points in the investigation. To understand why those questions matter, you have to step back and look at the broader system. For years, the FAA has been dealing with a challenge it has not fully solved: staffing, not a minor shortage, not a temporary gap. Thousands of air traffic controllers are below target levels across the system. This is not speculation. It has been documented in workforce reports and acknowledged in policy discussions, industry analysis, and congressional hearings. And the problem is not just hiring, it is time. Training a new controller is not a short process. At complex facilities, it can take multiple years before someone is fully certified and capable of handling traffic independently. That timeline is dictated by safety requirements. It cannot simply be compressed without introducing new risks into the system. At the same time, experienced controllers retire. Some leave earlier than expected. Others move into supervisory or administrative roles, and the pipeline struggles to keep up. The result is a system that is constantly managing a gap between how operations are designed to function and how they sometimes function in reality. At high-pressure airports like LaGuardia, that gap matters. Because when staffing is tight, operations do not always look the way they do in manuals or in ideal models. Responsibilities can shift and workloads can increase. In certain situations, tasks that are normally separated may be handled differently depending on conditions in real time. That does not automatically create danger, but it changes something critical. Margin. Aviation safety is built on margin. Extra time, extra awareness, extra layers designed to absorb small errors before they escalate. When margin decreases, the system becomes less forgiving. Back to March 22nd. At approximately 11:37 p.m., Flight 8646 was cleared to land on Runway 4. At around the same time, a Port Authority fire truck was cleared to operate on or cross that same runway. 2 clearances, same runway. What matters now is timing. When exactly were those clearances issued? How close together were they? What information did the controller have in that moment? What was visible? What was communicated? What was prioritized? Those are the questions investigators are now working to answer. There is also another element being examined. Investigators are looking into whether the controller may have been handling additional tasks, including communication through an emergency phone line in the moments leading up to the collision. But that sequence has not yet been fully established. And that matters because right now there is no final conclusion. No official cause, no completed report. What exists instead is a developing picture. One that suggests this was not a simple, isolated error. It is being examined as a system-level event, one where multiple factors, staffing, workload, procedures, communication, and timing may have intersected at the same moment. And that brings us to the uncomfortable part of this story. Because this is not just about what happened in those final seconds, it is about what conditions made those seconds possible. The FAA has been aware of its staffing challenges for years. Funding has been requested, Congress has responded, but gradually hiring has increased, training pipelines have expanded, but the gap has not fully closed. And in that gap, the system adapts. Not through one major decision, but through hundreds of smaller ones, shift by shift, tower by tower, adjustments, workarounds, operational flexibility. Until one night, those adjustments align in the worst possible way. The NTSB will reconstruct every second. They will analyze every transmission. They will review staffing, procedures, and timing. They will publish a preliminary report. Eventually, they will issue a final report with findings and recommendations. That process is slow, it is methodical, and it is designed that way. But there is a deeper question running underneath all of it. Not just what happened on that runway, but whether the system had enough margin left to prevent it. Because aviation safety does not rely on perfection. It relies on layers, redundancy, separation, workload limits, clear communication. Each layer exists to catch errors before they become disasters. But when those layers are stretched, the system becomes less forgiving. And when timing aligns in the worst possible way, those layers can fail together. On March the 22nd, 2026, at LaGuardia Airport, that is what investigators are now trying to understand. 2 pilots lost their lives, dozens of passengers were injured, and an investigation began that is now looking far beyond a single clearance. Because this might not be about one mistake. It might be about how the system behaves under pressure and whether that pressure is increasing. So here is the question. Where should the focus be? More staffing? stricter procedures, more redundancy, or a fundamental rethink of how the system operates under constraint? Because whatever the answer is, it is no longer theoretical. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want to understand the institutional pressures shaping aviation right now, subscribe. This is what we do here. Thank you for watching and take care.